What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, and it is April 22nd, 2019, getting toward the end of the month here. We've got a lot to talk about today. It's been a very busy weekend, very busy news day. And the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Excuse me a second. Okay, and Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. And obviously, the big tragic story over the weekend were the attacks, the suicide bombings carried out against hotels and churches in Sri Lanka. And it was during Easter Sunday services. And even for people like me who are not observant, you have to wonder, what the heck is going on? And supposedly they have discovered that this group, the National Tawhid Jamaat, which is this jihadi group, and was being led by Molvi Zaran Hashim, who perished in one of the bombings. There were suicide bombings. So they basically said, yes, it's a Muslim group that was doing this. And I find myself very upset over the idea of any religious organization, and that includes Christian. Let's not forget the Inquisitions. Go out there and says, God wills it, and they're whacking each other with swords. And it was rather interesting that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, in their tweets commenting about the events in Sri Lanka, referred to the victims as Easter worshipers. Pardon me. They were chastised for that almost immediately, saying, no, they're Christians. Call them Christians. And it's almost like there's this universal desire not to identify Christians as Christians. And I have to wonder what's behind all of that. But boy, it's been a tough week, tough couple of weeks for Christians. First of all, with the burning of the Notre Dame Cathedral, and now with these bombings, at least 206 known dead, 450 plus wounded. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Somebody gets it into their head. God wills it. We're going to blow ourselves up and take a bunch of people with us. So, anyway, even before the fire at Notre Dame, there had been some commentary about churches in France being targeted for vandalism, arson, and they're not exactly sure who's doing it, whether it's Muslims or Hindus or Jews. But there's an article that came out from Blacklisted News basically saying churches have become the #1 target for hate attacks, an average of 105 every single month. Now, I would understand if these attacks were being carried out by people who were, as children, abused by the clergy. That I can understand. The rest of it, no, I don't. Whatever happened to live and let live? Whatever happened to thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not covet? And I know every religion brands itself as a religion of peace and then goes on out to cut each other's throats to make sure their theology is straight. But I find myself very discouraged and disappointed over what happened in Sri Lanka. Not that I've ever been to Sri Lanka. I don't ever plan on going to Sri Lanka. But it's just, why? You have to ask why. And I'm very disappointed. These people think they're acting, you know, on the benefit of some God. How do they make that God look when they behave that way? When somebody goes on out and desecrates somebody else's church or graveyard, or vandalizes a church or burns a church, saying, I'm doing it in the name of my God, how do they make that God look? Something to think about. I hope they'll think about it. Anyway, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Getting on over to the war zones here. Apparently in western Aleppo, a supposed chemical weapons warehouse at Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, near the city of Al-Atirib in western Aleppo, exploded on April 20th. According to government sources, the warehouse was one of the sites where militants were arming rockets and shells with toxic materials. Looks like somebody made a mistake over there. Whoopsie, dropped a lighter. Just like over at Notre Dame, Quasimodo dropped his bic. And apparently members of the organization White Helmets reportedly recovered the bodies of at least 6 people killed in the explosion. 3 injured people were evacuated to nearby hospitals. The version of the events provided by pro-militant media outlets argues the targeted facility was belonging to a local pharmaceutical company known as El Khalil and stored baby milk only. Pro-opposition media added the explosion was likely caused by an improvised explosive device. Nonetheless, it remains unclear who would need to blow up a baby milk storage facility. Now, there is a caveat having to do with that, and that is that any material that is finely powdered can be explosive. And in the American Midwest, there is an ongoing problem with grain silos or corn silos just exploding. Because over time, the corn grinds itself into a very fine dust, and that very fine dust can be explosive. Alrighty, so anyway, apparently over in Poland, the U.S. ambassador has created quite a bit of anger. She wished Jews a happy Passover in Polish on Friday, didn't mention anything about Easter, and as a result, well, she did wish the Poles a happy Easter on Sunday, but the ambassador, Georgette Mossbacher, was accused of offending the mostly Roman Catholic country with the tweet, with some people saying it was a provocation. So, wasn't all that good. Okay, over in Ukraine, they've had their elections. Poroshenko is out. He lost the election, and the comedian, the TV comedian, 41 years old, Volodymyr Zelensky, won the election. So, he's in. And we'll see what happens with him as the new president of Ukraine. Hopefully things will lighten up a little bit. His claim to fame is that he played the president on a TV show. So we'll see how well he does now that he actually is the president of Ukraine here. Over in Iran, they are threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz if the U.S. blocks any more Iranian oil exports. And apparently this is in response to the report that Trump will not reissue Iranian oil export waivers after they expire on the 2nd of May. That would remove up to 1 million barrels of oil from the market. that would drive oil prices up. Get ready to get soaked at the gas pump. And Iran is saying they'll just shut down the Strait of Hormuz. So it is definitely on. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Donald in Russia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, this terrorism stuff, there's some links I'd like to share with you.
Okay.
The things going on in South America, and I'd like to link that back to the conquistadors and a two-class society, Mexico, Latin America, left over. But actually the conquistadors that set up that two-tier culture, which, by the way, the liberation theology, this Pope is actually very much aware of that.
Yeah.
I learned about that from some nuns back in 1980. But at any rate, what I wanted to get to, you mentioned the Inquisition.
Yes.
And actually, I was surprised to find out that in the 700 years that the Muslims ruled Spain, actually the Jewish were their enforcers and collectors.
Yes.
And bookkeepers.
Yes.
And many were rescued by the Turkish Caliphate and were in Turkey. Their what do you call it? Children. Mm-hmm. Until Israel was established. But it just the cultural thing there. What I was terribly shocked about 2 weeks ago, because looking at Muhammad learned what he learned of the people of the book. He was a camel caravan driver for Jewish merchants and had quite a nice reputation, but they would stop for the evening at an oasis, and
yes.
Muhammad was from a storytelling culture. That's actually quite it's degraded to say people are illiterate, but the Roma, or what we call gypsies in America,
yeah,
had a culture for 1,000 years, riding around and just storytelling.
Yes.
And that's the background of Muhammad. Well, they would sit, and he learned the Torah from the Jewish merchants that he was driving caravans for. And I was terribly shocked to learn that in Numbers chapter 8 is where he learned to kill them all but keep the virgins. That was what Moses told them when they had killed all the adult male Midianites, and they had the children and the women, and Moses told them, kill them all, the boys and all the women that have been with a man. And that's where Muhammad learned for your God, you can kill the non-believers, but you can keep the virgins for yourself. And it just makes me so sad. I've been a faithful Christian, and I still am. It was a priesthood that had Christ killed. So that he stood up.
Well, no. It was the Romans who killed Christ because he attempted to foment a revolution.
I understand, but it was the priest that took him to the...
they were certainly happy to see him go. There's no question about that. Yeah.
But the idea is, and I'm so... when you go back studying the background, I'm so... the archetype of Abraham, if you really look at it, he worshiped the Most High unseen God rather than some object. And the big thing is, he was the archetype for not sacrificing your babies.
Yep.
And set up his special people who didn't kill their babies. If you look at the history of infanticide. It's part of the human nature, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
Throw them off the cliff, put them in the river, leave them out for the animals or whatever. But Abraham started this special people who didn't sacrifice their children.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, I don't know, you'll have to pardon me, I've about spilled all my beans, except the thing with the Jewish, with the indoctrination that they have, it deprives the children of a kind of common sense. So many Jewish have done so much good in trying to have a revolution, like in Russia.
Yeah.
That was a large part Jewish. I was surprised to learn from one of my ex-students in Buffalo that the Jewish who were and the women's liberation was a big part of the communist revolution too. It freed the women, but the Jewish were so much involved. They were recruiting Jewish, and even the Jewish, what do you call it, like mafia in America, were being recruited. Now, this I could another time. I don't have the references for this, but it was in the Buffalo Evening News that they were recruiting the Jewish thugs for some reason I don't understand. But they said, "Oh, we can't come. We don't speak Russian." And the Jewish that were recruiting them said, "Well, you don't have to worry. We all speak. What is it that the Jewish the language?
Hebrew.
Forgive me. Pardon?
Hebrew.
No, not Hebrew. What they speak in Europe.
Yiddish.
Yes. You don't have to worry, you speak British now. I just learned that this morning. He's a friend now. I'm going on. It was years ago. I had him in high school, but at any rate, he calls and he shared that this morning. But the thing is, I'm not trying to degrade the Jewish as a race or something like that, but the effect of this culture, and that they have been used to dominate. Many of the Jews that escaped the Inquisition went to northern Germany.
Yeah,
they served the German lords the same way they did the Muslims. The German lords wouldn't let the serfs learn to read or write even, but they didn't want their children to be doctors, getting their hands dirty and then getting infection with people. The Jewish were the doctors, the bookkeepers for the aristocrats. At any rate, it is kind of just logical. The thing that it seems to me that's unfortunate with all this memorization of the Torah, book learning is fine, but there's nothing like getting out and building pig pens and chicken coops and having common sense, you know. And
yes.
many of these revolutionaries, they lack some intuition because they've had this, you know, childhood indoctrination that deprived them of something. That's what it seems to me. At any rate, that's my thoughts. Thank you for letting me share them.
Okay, well, thank you for your call, and we're going to let you go here and get on back to the news. Okay.
Oh, one more thing.
Okay.
Trump in South America, he's going in with this upper class, and it really those conquistadors, the Visigoth lords that took over, converted to Catholicism from home church Gothic.
Yep.
And they to keep their power, they gave the title and their land to their eldest son, and their other sons became priests and army officers, the upper class, you know.
Yep.
But they treated the lower class the same way the Muslims had treated the Christians. The Christians had.
Okay, Donald, we got to let you go. Donald, we got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And getting on back to the international news here, Russia has secured a 50-year deal to use part of the seaport of Tartus in Syria. And apparently the deal goes into effect basically in a week. It's going to be used for economic use and transport, but also obviously Russia will have military ships there. So in 2017, Russia and Syria signed the agreement on the deployment of the logistical center of the Russian Navy for 49 years in Tartus. And apparently, Deputy Prime Minister Yuri Borisov says it'll be a serious boost for mutual trade as well. Trade is a good thing. Peace through commerce is a good thing. Okay. Now, getting on back to Paris and the Notre Dame fire, there were a lot of people who were floating the idea that Macron had done this to try and build unity in France, and he certainly was calling for unity and try and damp down the yellow vest protests. Well, if that was what he hoped, it didn't work, because apparently over the weekend, the yellow vests were back, angrier than ever. Apparently, they blame government neglect for the Notre Dame fire. They're even out there saying they're urging the police to commit suicide. So that's getting to be some very, very serious stuff over there. The United States is still supplying the Kurds in Syria to counteract Turkey, which is not making Turkey very happy. But apparently the situation in the Rukban refugee camp has deteriorated. They're trying to get more supplies in there. Turns out that the camp refugees were not being treated very well at all. But apparently every single day between 10 and 20 people, mainly women and children, die in the Rukban refugee camp from lack of drinking water, essential goods, and medicine. Just in the last 2 months, 250 children have died. This is a camp under U.S. control. There are 50,000 refugees residing in the Rukban camp, even though it was designed only for 25,000. And the catastrophe is caused by the illegal actions of the U.S. authorities. Their homes and shelters in the northern and northeastern part of Syria have been destroyed by the indiscriminate airstrikes of the U.S. coalition. I don't know why we keep calling it a coalition. It's mostly U.S. forces, and there's a couple of planes from France, and a couple of planes from Great Britain, and a couple of planes from Germany. It's not really a coalition. It's the United States, and they've brought these other countries along to make it look like there's some legitimacy. Apparently there was a new body count from Sri Lanka. It's up to 290. I don't understand this. I really don't understand this. This insanity of killing on behalf of your religion. Whether it's Muslim against Christian, Christian against Muslim, Jewish against Christian, Christian against Jew, Hindu against Muslim. Where did all this insanity come from? All of these religions go back to the same source, Abraham. They're all Abrahamic religions. How can anybody get up there in a pulpit and start saying, grab your sword, we're going to go give the other guys what for? It's terrible, 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 terrible. Okay, outgoing French ambassador to the United States, Gerard Araud, in an interview in The Atlantic, basically said Israel is already an apartheid state. We knew that. And he said that the Trump administration's so-called deal of the century is dead on arrival. And he's absolutely correct. Israel is an apartheid state, and the Trump administration's deal of the century is entirely one-sided. The Palestinians are never going to go for it. So this guy definitely knows what he's talking about. And we've got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we've got callers waiting on the line here. So let's start with Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. You do understand it. It's called the U.S. dollar.
Yes.
U.S. economy is based on war. That's it.
I think we can have an economy that's based on something other than war, and we'd actually have a better economy. The advantage of a war economy is you build stuff that you expect will never be used, and if it is used, there's nothing left over to say whether it worked or not.
Yeah. Raytheon is worth what? 20 or it receives about $28-30 billion a year from the United States taxpayer.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a good business. I had enough contact with it, years ago when I was, I was involved in that kind of stuff here, and I had contact with it. And it was just, it's stunning to see the amount of money that's involved. That it's just flowing.
Stunning. Yeah, that's an understatement. Mike, what's to stop a company like that from spending, they have like a little budget, maybe, $50 to $100 million a year, just going out stirring up trouble.
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And how many big companies like that are around?
Well, I'm sure that they spend a lot of money on political donations to politicians who will start trouble in order to stir up.
Not even talking about that.
Yeah.
That's another aspect, right?
That's another aspect, but you're absolutely right. I mean, companies that make the weapons of war are going to do what they can to get wars going because that will improve their business. There was actually this movie starring Chevy Chase and Sigourney Weaver called Deal of the Century, and it was a comedy that was kind of based on this whole thing. And it was kind of lighthearted and so forth, but it sort of delved into that mindset a little bit.
Well, I don't really think it's a mindset. I think it's the way it works. Eisenhower warned everybody about it.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, look where we're at.
Yep.
Mike, you had a Honda or something like that for about like 14, 15 years, right?
Yes.
Something like that?
Yep.
Now, Honda could have engineered that car to last twice as long, easily. But in our debt-based monetary system, where debt is growth, for some reason,
yes.
It doesn't. It's just amazing how that works. Destruction is somehow, what
it's
we want.
Planned obsolescence. It's planned obsolescence. The low-end cars are designed to last only 5 years. The high-end cars are designed to last 8 years, 5 years for the original owner, plus 3 years for the aftermarket. Now, if you take care of the cars, and it literally comes down to how much they anodize the car bodies. Now, these days, the car bodies are made more and more of plastic. But when you were looking at where the car bodies were still made of steel, they would literally galvanize the cars so that after 5 years, the galvanization would be gone and the car bodies would start rusting through.
Yeah, but it's our whole economy is based on destruction in one way or another.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And in the end, we're the ones that are destructing. is no one lives forever. Our whole world, everything in it, is all based upon death or destruction, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And there's no way around it. So, you know, these people that live in that make-believe world of belief, you know, they're not doing themselves any favors by trying to compete with something as big and as unnatural as the United States military. Because they don't care. The people running that whole thing, and I'm not saying it's they're politicians. I mean the real people that are running that, the owners. They don't care about us.
No, they're just, to them, we're workers, soldiers, and a source of wealth.
Yep, you got it, Mike. You have a good show. I appreciate your time. Have
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Jim in Chicago. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Michael, these are three things that no one's talking about that took place over the weekend. The first thing, you mentioned about the terrorists bombing 3 churches, 2 Catholic and 1 Protestant church. Most people don't realize or know that there is a Jewish synagogue in Colombo, and they didn't even touch the synagogue or this Jewish travel lodge, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, it definitely, this attack was targeting the Catholics, the Christians.
Right, and ignored the Jewish synagogue. But you would have thought if they're Islamic, they would have gone after it. The other story...
Maybe.
And maybe.
Well, you know, I mean, it's no secret that there are a lot of people in Israel who would like to spark a confrontation between Christians and Muslims and let us kill each other off. You know, then Israel basically claims dominion over what's left over.
You're reading my mind. You're right about that. Mm-hmm. And the situation in Syria, 35 Syrian government forces were murdered by ISIS. And I thought ISIS was gone in Syria.
Yep.
And the final story, in Libya, mainly Tripoli, they were having some major fighting, and the mainstream media won't even talk about it.
There's a lot going around the entire world that we are not being told by our corporate media, which is obsessed with, Kim Kardashian and LGBTQ and what restrooms we're supposed to be using. And I think part of the reason is that most Americans don't realize just how many wars our country is involved in right now. And I think if they were aware of that, they'd start standing up and saying, look, this is out of control, and we've got to stop this right now, because we don't have the money to fight all these wars. We don't have the people to fight all these wars. We don't have the supplies to fight all these wars, and we are going to lose.
Right. And the sad thing about Syria and Libya, 8 years ago, those countries were fairly middle class and stable. We had no business going in there and destroying those countries.
True.
Well, Michael, that's it. You take care.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call, but you're absolutely right. We had no business going into any of these countries. They did not attack us. They were not a threat to us other than in the economic sense. We went to war in places like Afghanistan over things like oil pipeline rights of way, what currency the oil was being traded in. That's what we went to war for. That's what our children were killed and crippled for. It's all about the money here. Okay, over in North Korea, apparently the situation there is kind of tense. The negotiations between Trump and Kim Jong-un are at a standstill, but some of the lower level officials like Patrick Gosha are trying to maintain an optimistic point of view, saying at the DMZ line. I don't know. Trump was this close to getting it to work. And he blew it. He absolutely blew it because he didn't understand the Asian mindset. He just wanted to get on out there and say, I'm going to be tough. You give me everything I want, then I'll do something nice for you. That doesn't play very well. Hardly, not just Asia, pardon me, everywhere around the world, that's not going to work. So, pardon me. Over in Turkey, Erdogan is facing a challenge from the former prime minister, and apparently this is tangled up with a recently exposed fraud with the Turkish central bank. And apparently this was reported in Financial Times. The country's real foreign exchange reserves of 12 billion were half of the 24 billion claimed. So there's a big stink about that, and Erdogan is now in the crosshairs here. All right, let's turn to our domestic politics here. Apparently, impeachment is in the air again. Now, Nancy Pelosi was saying it's off the table, but a lot of the progressives are out there saying, no, absolutely not. We've got to impeach Donald Trump. And was even on Fox News here just a little bit ago during one of our radio commercial breaks. And it is rather, how should I put this? It's disconcerting to see how much rancor there is. Now, apparently, some of the Democrats are convinced that there is enough in the Mueller report to seek impeachments against the president. Now, they can impeach. They don't have the votes to remove him from office. And if they impeach him and fail to remove him from office, he's going to have a lot of sympathy going into 2020. But there apparently are a lot of Democrats who just are not thinking strategically. Now, Robert Mueller himself did not deliver an opinion on his investigation. He basically said this is all up to Congress. And Pelosi is out there saying impeachment isn't on the table, which she's doing to protect Democrats in swing districts whose midterm triumphs effectively handed Dems control of the House. And she's concerned that it could swing the other way in 2020. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Elizabeth Warren are now out there demanding the House explore the possibility of impeaching Trump. Pelosi is trying to suppress that. And apparently Rashida Tlaib is out there once again with her impeach the MF. Now Tulsi Gabbard is saying, let's just leave it up to the voters. She's saying, let's not bother with impeachment. Trump is probably going to get voted out of office in 2020. And actually, she's correct. He probably is. And Tulsi is saying, the Mueller report showed there was no collusion. And let's not lose sight of that. That was being sold to us by the corporate media and the Democrats for 2 years. Collusion, 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 collusion. There was no collusion. So now they're trying to change the story. Well, okay, maybe there was obstruction. How can there be obstruction if there wasn't a crime? That's what I want to know. If there was no collusion, there's no reason for there to be obstruction. So I'm in agreement with Tulsi Gabbard. Let's let Trump finish out his term, and we'll let the voters decide in 2020. I don't think he's going to win re-election. I think Bernie Sanders right now is the strongest leader. Of course, Joe Biden is going to step in on Wednesday The only thing good about creepy Uncle Joe stepping in is that might convince Hillary to stay out. All righty. Tulsi Gabbard has issued a new campaign video slamming Donald Trump for making the United States the prostitute of Saudi Arabia. And this, of course, relates to Donald Trump's veto of that measure passed by Congress to basically end U.S. support for the war in Yemen, which everybody keeps saying is Saudi-led. No, it isn't. The Saudis are acting as a U.S. proxy to recapture Yemen after it broke free from the U.S.-imposed puppet rule. Tulsi Gabbard also came on out. I like a lot of what she says. There are bad people in the world, but we can't be the world's policeman. Regime change wars cost millions of lives and strengthen terrorist organizations. Boy, is she bang spot on with that one. I do like Tulsi. I need to get around to one of her campaign events here now that I got a decent car. Get out there with a camera and a telephoto lens here. Okay. Rudy Giuliani, who's now working as Donald Trump's attorney, was being interviewed by Chris Wallace. And he said, basically, when did Mueller become God? Mueller says the injury to the justice system is still as great. And there was no injury. We're talking about an inchoate crime. We're talking about something that didn't even actually happen. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. Nothing was denied Mueller and his investigators. Nobody crushed cell phones like Hillary did. Nobody deleted 33,000 emails like Hillary's people did. Nobody bleached a server like Hillary did. So Giuliani summed it all up to Chris Wallace saying, you are treating these people as if they're fair. They are not. Yeah. Absolutely not. And, you know, Rudy brings up a good point. Why isn't anybody looking at Hillary's crushing of cell phones and deleting of 33,000 emails and wiping of the email server? Why is that still off limits? We're going to take a break here for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I'm looking at the photos from Sri Lanka and the damage that was done by these suicide bombers. I don't know. Sometimes it just feels like the whole world is going crazy. I mean, is it just me or are other people getting that same feeling? Anyway, we're going to take a phone call now. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I wanted to talk about Trump, but before that, Mike, did this, after this bombing, because this was obviously planned ahead,
yes.
Do you still think Notre Dame was like not intentional or has something to do with all this going on?
I'm keeping an open mind on Notre Dame. Obviously, what happened in Sri Lanka was intentional. It was coordinated. Apparently, I think 5 of the bombs went off within just literally a minute of each other, and then 3 went off later.
And there was supposedly another one when they tried to disarm a minivan.
Yeah.
And,
well, they just blew that one up.
Well, you know, there's over 300 people killed and over 700. I mean, and you know what's, Mike, I was wondering, did anybody see the Prime Minister from New Zealand, like wearing a shepherd, like, you know, holding a shepherd's cane? Because remember when that horrible thing happened in New Zealand? Everybody put on a hijab. Did you hear anything from these people? They won't even mention Catholicism or Christianity.
No, they called them Easter worshippers.
Yeah, I don't get that. Like, and didn't Theresa May also say that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's weird, isn't it? Like, it's like they hate us.
Yep.
Or they hate that religion per se. But Mike, how come they don't have a problem arming Wahhabists, because it's the same ideology that's coming out of that part of Sri Lanka, that extremist Islam, and Saudi Arabia and parts of Pakistan where they have those madrasas. Yeah. Nobody seems to stop it. Mike, it's like an incubator of death with proxy armies.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, I just don't understand. How can you, as a rational person, arm people that will eventually kill you? It's like arming somebody who comes into your house who's going to kill you with the gun.
Yes.
I mean, there's no common sense to it.
The sense is that nobody's really thinking far into the future. It's like these people are useful today against who we want to send them after. So we're going to give them a bunch of guns today, and when they're through killing the people that we want them to kill, they'll just hand us those guns back and all will be well. Of course, it never works out that way.
And also that caller who said about the synagogue not getting hit and also a lodge house.
Yeah.
But remember, I told you about there was this video with a Jewish, prior defense minister who said that, they were basically helping ISIS fighters on the battlefield. But when can I get held over?
Yeah, I'm going to hold you over the station identification. Stay on the line. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. And Dustin, take it away.
All right, let me restart that. So a former defense minister admitted to helping ISIS on the battlefield, giving aid and comfort to ISIS or these proxy armies, Al-Zinki, the 33, what do they call it, the 32 flavors of jihad, right?
Yeah.
But yet, when the person asked him if he would help a Hezbollah soldier on the battlefield, he goes, no. So this is who these people is siding with.
Yeah.
Okay? Not everybody in Israel, but the elite, the small group over here, the Mike Pompeos, the John Boltons, and on the other side, the Hillary Clintons, the Obama. That's who these people are helping.
Yeah.
Even though they will kill them, if they had the chance. I still can't understand. I know what it's about. It's about a proxy army to rule the world, basically, but
yes.
to use these people, but look at all the death. I mean, gee, look at all that death that's been going on since 9/11.
Yes.
It's increased, and I find it rich. They blame Iran as name an Iran attack where they had driving over people with lorries. That was Wahhabists from Saudi Arabia or that part of that sect. And Germany had it. Britain had it. Machetes, people getting hacked. We had it. But we still giving them aid. Trump is. All you Trumpsters out there, And Mike, by the way, this isn't it amazing how Trump can manipulate the oil prices by putting... This is not capitalism when you do that. If you are manipulating the oil price, and now the prices go up. And who does that benefit?
The oil companies.
It benefits Saudi Arabia, right? And the oil companies.
And it also benefits the U.S. government because the gasoline tax is based on a percentage of the gasoline prices. So as the gasoline prices go up, the tax revenues to the government go up.
And you look at Iran, they haven't attacked anybody in 200 and something years, but yet they're the state sponsor of terror, and us, Britain, France, Saudi Arabia, and Israel's not in Brussels. I'm throwing them in Canada because they're all part of that same group of
We're
people.
The good guys. Iran is the bad guys, and we're the good guys.
Well, I don't think the sanctions are going to do any good though, because India needs the oil.
Yes.
And China's not going to say, okay. And Mike, did you mention this last week? By the way, they signed up with the Belt and Road 17 Arab countries.
Yes.
Which has not been reported on the news at all. I haven't seen.
Nope.
So, they're doing business, we're doing war, and in the end, I think the business is going to supersede the war making because, every country you bomb, they're going to say, you know what? I think we'll go with the Chinese this time because they ain't bombing us. That's it.
Either China or Russia. I mean, there's a clear pattern there. The more the U.S. aggresses against other countries, either militarily or economically, the more these other countries are just turning away, and they're aligning with China and Russia. And it's a stupid foreign policy. But unfortunately, the people in charge of our foreign policy, they think with their bombs first.
Mike, before I get off that, Zelensky, who won the Ukraine election,
yes,
he's backed by an oligarch named Igor Kolomoisky, and he lives in Israel. And he's very powerful, and he's really rich.
I mean, Israel's already going ballistic that this is the first Jewish president of a country outside Israel.
Yeah, now, if things change, that's great. I don't see them changing much, if anything. But Mike, have a good show.
Well, I'll be very honest. I'm just glad that Poroshenko is out because I don't think he was doing some good thing. We'll see what this what this new guy does, and it's either going to be better or it's going to be worse. And I realize that's kind of a dumb thing to say, but that's how it always is. Oh, there's been a change. Well, it could be better, it could be worse. Who knows? All right, let's talk about the economic news here. And since we were talking about oil anyway, crude oil is actually sliding down. And part of the reason is a State Department official has revealed the wind down period for removing the waivers on Iranian crude exports will take an entire year. So oil prices have erased their earlier gains and fallen below a key technical level. Now, that's obviously good for those of you who live with oil-fired power plants or gasoline-powered cars. But it is rather disconcerting, I think, to have so much of our lives just under the control of these politicians who can just make a statement and send prices through the roof, and we're stuck having to pay them. And I don't think it ought to be that way. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. Over in Austria, they're starting to get a little bit upset. They're saying that the anti-Russia sanctions have cost Austria 100 billion with a B dollars. And this is coming from the former mayor of the city, Linz, Detlef Wimmer, at the International Economic Forum in Yalta. And they're basically blaming the United States of America, saying that they imposed these sanctions against Russia, and it's harmed the companies of many European countries, but Russia has survived. Crimea has survived. We can see what's been built here in the last 5 years. They're not working, and he's absolutely, absolutely right. If anything, they've made Russia more self-reliant. So, anyway. Now, Elizabeth Warren is proposing a new $640 billion with a B student college debt relief program that would also eliminate college tuition for all 2- and 4-year public colleges. Now, as you know, Warren is running for president in 2020, and she, like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Tulsi Gabbard, they're making all kinds of promises. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. So she's out there with this ambitious proposal, and she's trying to basically create what's called a point of difference. Now, if you work in advertising, you understand what that means. You have a product, and you have a product that's in a very crowded field of competitors. In this case, the Democratic lineup for 2020. There's a whole bunch of them, and they all kind of look more or less the same. So you need a point of difference. Where is this candidate different from the others? And Elizabeth Warren is out there saying, well, we're going to have a tax on the wealthy that is going to be used to ease the debt burden on the students. I'm all in favor of that, by the way. This whole student loan thing was just another scam anyway. To get these lure these kids in with promises of a degree that would lead to a high-paying job, which never transpired. And Warren is pointing out the student debt problem is so great, it's leading fewer people to start businesses. It's reducing home ownership rates. It's forcing students to drop out of school before getting a degree. Not that most of the degrees being offered by colleges these days are worth anything. Art history major, LGBTQ studies. It's amazing here. Article coming out of Malachi.mp. Would you vote with your feet? And it's talking about the fact that people are now starting to relocate for economic reasons. And of course, Claire and I are doing that. We're going to do that in the fall. We can't afford to live here in Hawaii anymore. We've already started making inquiries around Indiana, South Indiana. And we were just stunned at what the rents are there. And we should have done this a long time ago. So we're basically going to have to leave almost everything we own behind. We're going to take the computers, we're going to take the musical instruments, everything else is going to stay behind. And we're going to go to Indiana, and we're going to get ourselves a little ranch-style place because Claire doesn't do well with stairs. And we're going to be able to cut our cost of living virtually in half, which means we're going to have some money to pay up on some outstanding debts that I'd like to clear away. So they had this report, Rich States, Poor States, and it's the Economic State Competitiveness Index. Apparently, Utah is ranked first overall, reflecting its commitment to pro-growth policies, including low income tax rates, a low sales tax, and a business-friendly approach to labor. It was kind of interesting when we were talking to the people we know back in Indiana, and they said, oh, you know, we've got this horrible sales tax. I said, you have no idea how bad a sales tax can be, because the general excise tax here in Hawaii was just raised. They're trying to cover the budget shortfall from this ridiculous okay, hang on a second. Just give me a second. Hi, I'm on the radio show right now. All right, thank you. That was family. Alrighty. In fact, that was family in Indiana, oddly enough. Another story, this one is from My Budget 360. Millennials will be crushed under debt. Non-housing debt now reaches $4 trillion in the United States. The reason for that is very simple. Debt is good business. Get people into debt, plunge them into debt, enslave them to that debt, and they will work themselves to death and give you all the proceeds. Debt is slavery. Debt is enslavement. People need to understand that. You need to get out of debt. You need to not go into debt to begin with. And, you know, it's interesting. I was listening to all these commercials they had the other days about how, you know, they're trying to sell all these cars that they can't sell. And it was like $35 down, and, you know, don't worry about your credit. Our credit counselors will get you all set up. And I began to realize that the real business isn't the car sales anymore. It's getting people to sign that loan agreement I think that's where the big money is. It's keeping you enslaved to debt. That's what's driving this economy. All right, another story. This is actually a YouTube video about Poo Francisco. And it's a mess up there. Apparently, it is so bad. I saw this interactive map the other day. You just can't go anywhere without stepping in human poo. And this is a liberal, progressive city. And I guess, you know, us backward conservative states, you know, we use things like toilets. What can I tell you? All right, let's take a phone call. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. You know what place you might want to consider too?
What?
Where I used to live before I moved here, Amarillo, Texas, or at least around the Texas Panhandle.
Yep.
Cost of living is, you know, there's no income tax. Rents are, you know, comparatively very low. House prices are still low. You can still get a nice house for under $100,000. Your land isn't expensive either there, and the climate is. Other than if you know the wind, there's a lot of wind, but
yeah.
Other than that, the climate is beautiful because it's dry. It's 4,000 feet above sea level, and it's on a climate, and it's you really don't feel a lot of humidity or anything like that, even if it gets like to 100 degrees. And you're close to cities like Albuquerque. You're not too far from Albuquerque, Oklahoma City, places like that. You know, it's the only reason I moved here to North Carolina, which isn't too bad, cost of living life, but it rains too much. You know, the only reason I moved here is family. I have a family living here. You know,
that's basically what's driving ours here. I mean, you know, for us, it's either going to be Indiana or it's going to be New England. Because Claire has family in Indiana and I have family in New England. But just being on the mainland means we're an hour's, you know, if we're in the middle of the country, we're basically an hour's flight from anywhere. And I get a lot of invitations to speak at various symposiums and conventions, but I can't do it from here in Hawaii because I can't afford the airfare. So if I'm in Indiana, you know, even if I have to drive, I'll be able to get on out there and talk to people and get up on that stage and say, look, people, here's what's going on with this country.
The problem with New England, though, is it's very expensive also, you know? If you go way up into New England, I mean, way up into northern Maine, northern New Hampshire, northern Vermont, you might do okay.
Yes.
But for the most part, New England is also a very expensive place. Not to mention it's cold. I used to live in Maine for a while, and for 6 months I had to get out of there. It's the winters were never, you know, the winters just kept on going and going.
Yeah.
I went out a lot of times. The snow was actually literally waist deep. Literally waist deep. I used to have to drive to work because I lived in Lewiston. I had to drive to work in Portland, and the snow, you know, it was dangerous driving like that. Plus, I was working night. And, you know, I was tired driving back and all that. And, you know, I got stopped one time by a state trooper. He says, look, I just want to tell you something. We got animals here. He knew right away from out of state. I moved actually there from New York at the time. And he says, we got animals here, meaning moose, that you don't want to hit one of them. You know?
No, you don't.
He could tell I was tired. He knew he knew right away I wasn't drunk or anything. Like I hadn't been drinking. He can tell I was, you know, I was working nights there. And he said, you want to be real careful, okay? Because of the kind of animals the guy is. So I mean, it can be rough. I mean, but of course, if you live like in northern Maine, Lewiston probably isn't too bad still, where I did used to live. And the further up north, I guess, would be less. But again, you better, you know, you're going from one extreme to the other.
Well, you know, Claire and I have pretty much decided it's going to be Indiana, Kentucky, someplace around there, and you know. Again, it's because we want to be close to family. There are little people that I get to annoy and harass. As they grow up, I get to teach them about dinosaurs and astronomy and things like that. Claire doesn't do well in cold weather, which is why we've kind of already ruled New England out. But we're still going to go up there for visiting family. But we want to get off this island before the war starts.
You should stay in southern Indiana then too, because the northern Indiana is brutally cold.
Yeah, southern Indiana is where we're looking. Southern Indiana is where we're looking.
When I used to live in Amarillo, I used to go back and forth to see my sons who were in college at the time in upstate New York, and I used to drive. And during the winter, boy, I'll tell you, the trip, driving from, once you start hitting the Midwest, when you start hitting Missouri wasn't too bad. Once you start hitting Indiana and Ohio,
yep,
and you're getting into upstate New York, boy, look out, So southern Indiana shouldn't be too bad. Hey, look, I wish you guys the best,
Well, thanks an awful lot. We're trying to pull this all together. I don't want to have to do a GoFundMe page, but we may be forced to do that. We're going to have to leave everything behind here in Hawaii. Anyway, Mark, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go right back to the phones here to Doreen in Vancouver. Aloha, Doreen. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hello, Mag. Yeah, I was just listening to Justin, which I enjoy his phone calls every day. He kind of wants to know just what's going on in the world, like this is happening and that. But I came across a YouTube link. It's called Giants Who Really Rules the World. And Abby Mark, there's actually a book called Giants, the Global Power Elite, William Robinson. But anyway, that's it. And then I know about the being on the outside, listening to the American election, which happens in Canada as well. But to me, it doesn't matter who they vote in. They're both owned by the same people. The owners is like having two race horses in one race, and you own both of them. If one wins, it doesn't matter who wins. They still control the government. Democrats or Republicans, to me, being on the outside and seeing what's happening, because Trump and Hillary's family are the same elite. They're married into the elite, and even if Hillary had got in, it would have been the same thing. Maybe a little faster than what's happening. Yeah. But I noticed things are happening. Like, to me, Trump was if I had a choice, I would have gone with him. But he's a showman, and then you get a comedian in Italy that gets voted in, and now you get a comedian voted in the Ukraine. It seems like it doesn't matter. The people are searching for something. Anyway, that's what I thought. I thought Dustin could look at that link and of giants who really rule the world, and he'll get all the information he wants to know. And I really enjoy your show, Mike and Claire, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Bye-bye. Enjoy your show.
All right, we're going to switch over here to Fred in Harbor Springs. Aloha, Fred. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, I've got a question that is really in your neighborhood. I'm not really a global warming advocate. I think it's all a bunch of baloney.
Yep.
But I read a story in Breitbart this morning that said that Hawaii is being flooded because of global warming and the sea is rising. Any ideas?
Well, we're not
see that. I mean,
we're not seeing it here. In fact, if anything, it's been a very cool spring, yeah, we now maybe it's because we've lived here for a very long time and we're just used to it. But as far as Claire and I are concerned, it has been very, very cool. It's about 80 degrees right now, which is comfortable for us. But during the night, it does definitely get down to it does get down into the 60s.
Well, I'm sitting in my back porch right now after like 180 inches of snow and enjoying the sun. But I guess the point I was trying to make, Michael, is that they were showing pictures of roads, okay,
Yeah.
in Hawaii being flooded, and they were saying it's because the ocean is rising because of global warming. Have you seen that? I mean,
No, I haven't.
Inform me.
I haven't.
We'll go to Breitbart. They said they were showing like Hawaiian cities where the roads are just and the beaches and everything are gone, you know, because of the rising sea levels. So I thought you might know something about that, but you might look that up. Because
I'll certainly look it up here, but I haven't heard anything here locally. Now, there are certain stretches of roads along the coastline that during high tides will become flooded. But that's kind of a normal thing around here. So I'm looking at Breitbart,
and it's not global warming. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's see. I'm not seeing it here. I'm not getting a result for Hawaii's searches. So, let's see.
Flooding roads in Hawaii, and I saw that this morning. So,
well, it's not there anymore. It's not there anymore. So I'm just going to look at this.
Okay, well.
You know, Emily Reichikowski in her thong that seems to have taken over. Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Fred, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to James in Sacramento. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. Aloha. The first thing is I want to give a shout out to Lenny from LA. And this is short. I love that guy. You know, if he can contact more of the blacks in his neighborhood to make them realize that back in the 60s and 70s, we used to get along.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you know, the LA County sheriffs didn't get along with them, but everybody else got along, you know. And then the other thing that has to do with the thing with these Islamists, I mean, it blows my mind. You know, I mean, they fight amongst each other. It's just the way the Catholics and the Protestants fight among each other. You know? And even in the Jewish culture, there was the two Jewish factions that always fought amongst each other. Everybody fights amongst each other in their religions. And it just, you know, because what was it? Abraham had Sarah. She was barren.
Yes.
And so she allowed him to have a child with her slave, a servant. You know, and that was Ishmael. And then Sarah had Isaac.
Yep.
So, and there you go. And the war goes on from there. And then the other thing I have to say is that, you know, when you look at human past, we would build walls for animals. They were small walls. And when you look at some of the fortifications that were made thousands of years ago, they had huge walls. The only reason you have huge walls is because man was fighting man a long time ago.
Yes.
And it's been going on. It's been going on forever, you know. And I'm going to close with this. Rod Serling has one of his shows called Allergy. And the guy that winds up, you know, poisoning those dudes from the spaceship that lands on the asteroid.
Yes.
And he, as they're dying, he tells me, he goes, wherever man is, there can be no peace. You know? And it's something that stuck with me ever since I was a kid. You know? And then as far as contributing to your stuff, I bought the thing that was on your line called the most expensive coffee cup. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember
the most expensive coffee cup. So, you know, and that's it, man. You know, all right, brother. Carry on a good show, man.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are now open again if you want to call on in. Okay, we're talking about the economic news here. And Donald Trump's tariffs are not really working out. And just to pick one of them out to pick on, his tariffs on washing machines, basically they're costing consumers $800,000 in order to create a $43,000 per year factory job. So it wasn't really thought through all the way. It's just costing the American people more to buy these products. And the importers are just going to go on importing and selling the products. They're not going to set up a factory. It takes a lot of work to set up a factory. I know, because that's what my father used to do. He used to set up manufacturing facilities. That was a lot of work. And you had to get everything right the first time. So all the parts coming together and being assembled correctly. It's not like computer programming where you can just go back in and edit the software. Okay, here's another article talking about people who are just getting out of the urban areas and heading for the rural areas. It's America's forced financial flight, fleeing unaffordable and dysfunctional cities. And boy, are they dysfunctional. And they're basically talking about how the rents are going through the roof, which is true. We just got hit with a huge rent increase here. It's kind of what motivated us to say we're going to get off this island, along with the possibility of a mushroom cloud out that window. But it's almost a reversal because, you know, long ago it was rural poverty that drove people to the urban areas for the opportunities there. Now it's reversed. It is the cost of living in the urban environment are driving people back to the rural areas. Of course, I prefer rural anyway. I grew up on a farm. I loved it when we lived in Washington State. And we're certainly going to be looking for a rural environment when we move to Indiana. Okay, apparently Theresa May was looking at a major reshuffle of her cabinet, but apparently that is now on hold because of a new delay in Brexit. And apparently 3 out of 5 party members plan to refuse to vote Tory in the Euro elections. This thing is a huge mess. It should have been over by now, but everybody is out there still trying to get their way. The Remainers want to remain. The Brexiteers want out. Looking at the immigration situation here, it is now estimated that 800,000 illegal immigrant children will enroll in the U.S. schools by late 2020. This is more financial pressure on you, the American taxpayers. And apparently 50,000 students will enroll in California, 36,000 will enroll in Texas. They're just pouring on in here, and they're absorbing resources. Now, this is a story that is a little concerning. Apparently, armed Mexican troops disarmed 2 United States soldiers while they were on the American side of the border. So, U.S. Northern Command said that 5 to 6 Mexican military personnel crossed the border and questioned 2 U.S. Army soldiers who were conducting border support operations. Now, the U.S. soldiers were in an unmarked Customs and Border Protection vehicle near the southwest border near Clint, Texas. Officials confirmed the Mexican troops were armed. They raised their weapons when they saw the U.S. soldiers, took a pistol from one, put it in the Customs and Border Protection vehicle, and the two Americans just sort of backed down. They didn't want to escalate the situation. Okay, well, first of all, Trump needs to have that ambassador from Mexico over for a little bit of a talk. There should not be U.S. military personnel on our side of the border interdicting our military personnel. Now, Mexico is out there saying, well, they're trying to look after the safety of the illegal immigrants, because apparently there are these vigilante militias that are now patrolling the border trying to send the migrants back. Well, if the government of Mexico is so concerned about the safety of the migrants, turn them around, send them home. They really shouldn't be here. And I find it very alarming that the FBI is out there arresting these militia groups, or the leaders of these militia groups, who are just trying to enforce our borders. So they can enforce these militia leaders, they can arrest these militia leaders, they won't arrest the illegal immigrants. It's just a totally screwed up mess here. And even worse, apparently human smugglers in Arizona are now firing on the Department of Homeland Security agents with AK-47s. This is now becoming an armed invasion of our border. Why is Donald Trump not sending the army down there to shoot back at these people? This is totally out of control. Totally out of control. Anyway, on Saturday, the FBI arrested Larry Hopkins, the leader of an armed group that is blocking undocumented migrants after they cross the U.S.-Mexico border into New Mexico. And the arrest came 2 days after the ACLU accused the group of illegally detaining migrants, and New Mexico's Democratic Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham ordered an investigation. Now, Hopkins, also known as Johnny Horton, was arrested in Sunland Park, New Mexico on a federal complaint charging him with being a felon in possession of firearms and ammunition. Now, a spokesman for the United Constitutional Patriots said, "We're not worried about it. He's going to be cleared." Hopkins is the national commander of the UCP, which has had around half a dozen members camped out on a rotating basis near Sunland Park since late February. Well, I'm not normally in favor of vigilantism, but somebody's got to do something. And clearly, the government is dropping the ball. They've got troops down there. They've got Department of Homeland Security down there. They've got Border Patrol. What do? They welcome the people across the border, give them a work permit and a court date, for which most never show up, and let them go into a country where there are almost 100 million legal citizens unable to find work. This is just utterly, utterly insane. Now, Mexico is out there complaining over the armed groups on the U.S. border. And again, look, if you're that worried about the health and safety of the illegal immigrants, stop them on your side of the border. That'll solve the problem. Okay. Over in Austria, apparently their Interior Minister, Herbert Kickl, sent a letter to the EU Commission warning of a renewed migrant crisis this spring and calling for immediate preventative measures to be taken. And he cited that a huge number of migrants from Turkey will be heading to Europe once the weather improves, which it's doing right now. Kickel stated in the letter, there is an imminent crisis as he believes plans are ongoing for a large-scale migration from Turkey to Europe. Based on data released by the European Police Authority, Europol, tens of thousands of migrants are already in the region, including 60,000 in Greece, another 5,000 in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and another 5,000 in Serbia. Now, over in Hungary, they put up a fence. They put up a 10-foot razor wire electrified border fence, and it's protecting their country from mass immigration. And a mayor in Hungary, Laszlo Tarksai, is looking at this 100-mile fence. He's saying, it saved our town. It was erected back in 2015, and he says it hopes it will inspire the United States. I remember not too long ago, there was this company that said they could build the entire 2,000 miles of needed fence from the Rio Grande to the Pacific Ocean for less than what was budgeted for the concrete and steel monstrosity they're building now. And yes, it would be a razor wire fence topped with razor wire, and it would be electrified. And it looks good to me. But again, nothing is being done. This is another area in which Donald Trump has dropped the ball. He's not keeping his promises. He talks a lot. He talks a good shop. Nothing is getting done. The vaccines are not getting any safer. The elections aren't any more honest. Medical costs are still sky high. The illegal immigrants are still pouring across the border. I'm sorry, Donald Trump is a failure, as far as I'm concerned. Now, Russia has built a fence 60 kilometers long on the Crimean border with Ukraine. And in September of 2017, the Federal Security Services, the FSB branch of the annexed Crimean Peninsula, announced an auction to build a 2-meter high fence bordering Ukraine. And according to reports at the time, the fence was estimated to cost $2.8 million for 60 kilometers. It's not a bad little price at all here. Now, one thing Trump is doing, he's going to cut off Section 8 housing funds for illegal immigrants. Well, that's a step in the right direction. Alrighty. Over in Spain, the election authority has banned anti-mass migration populists from the TV debates. They're getting ready to have their elections. There's a populist leader who's campaigning on Make Spain Great Again, and he's been kicked off the televised debate because he's opposed to mass migration. Well, again, who's behind all of this? Well, we know George Soros is. But the Atlas Media Network was ordered to drop Vox leader Santiago Abascal from its debate after Spain's Central Election Board ruled his appearance would not be proportional to votes cast for the party at elections in 2015, when the then only recently formed party failed to win representation in the national parliament. Now, since then, Vox has enjoyed a huge breakthrough. But they're being kicked out of the debates. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Coming up on the top of the hour, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're coming up on the EU elections. And according to the latest polls, Nigel Farage's Brexit party looks to do very well. And for some reason, they're calling it a shock. I don't really find it a shock. I think the people of Great Britain, they want this whole Brexit nonsense to be over. They want what they voted for. And if they don't get it, I think there could be yellow vests in the streets of London. So Okay, there we are. Now, the Democrats, of course, are still out there with their gun grabber stuff, and they're working on a revision to the Violence Against Women Act, which will deny firearms licenses to people convicted of misdemeanor dating violence and misdemeanor stalking. Now, the current bill, it has to be felony violence or felony stalking. Now they want to lower it to misdemeanor in order to deny you your gun rights. So bit by bit, they're trying to chip away with it. And like I said, one of the areas I do not agree with Tulsi Gabbard on is her stance on gun rights and the Second Amendment. All right, so let's talk about Kate Smith, because once again, the PCers are out there just making a mountain out of a molehill. Now, history, of course, is never as clean as we'd like to think. People are not all good. People are not all bad. And you find out that, you know, Ben Franklin, for example, was a publisher, discovered that lightning is just static electricity, but he was also a womanizer. And I guess these days would be called a naturist. Walked around his home totally naked. That's just being a human being. So anyway, apparently the PCers who have run out of Confederate statues to tear down are now out after the memory of the late Kate Smith. And of course, she's famous for this song, God Bless America, which she used to belt out a lot. But apparently somebody was doing some digging and discovered two songs that Kate Smith sang back in the early 1930s, titled That's Why Darkies Were Born and Pickaninny Heaven. Now, the historical context is very clear. Back in the 1930s, these were considered socially acceptable songs. But not today, and so they want to just tear down her statues and ban God Bless America. Somebody had to really look to find those. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. Back with Hour 3 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open. 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. Okay. This is a very tragic story, if you will. And it has to do with this 12-year-old schoolgirl who committed suicide after being bullied by classmates. And apparently she shared a social media photo of her foot with RIP drawn on it. And the coroner was pointing out there was intense social media activity in the days before her death. Now, folks, parents especially, okay, this is not the entire world. It's a wonderfully convenient device, cell phone, browser, and so forth. But I think too many young people are sort of getting drawn into these electronic devices as if it's pretty much the entire world. And it shouldn't be. And I think parents have an obligation to tell their kids, that's not the entire world. It's a device. It's an appliance. That's it. Suicide seems to be on the increase in this country. Not just with children, with adults too. A lot of it's due to the economic pressures here. Okay, Jussie Smollett is apparently having nightmares. Poor baby. I saw it on the Fox News the other day. They were interviewing his brother. Oh yes, Jussie Smollett. He's having horrible nightmares after his fake hate crime blew up in his face. Poor baby. Let's all feel sorry for Jussie Smollett. All right, let's take a phone call. Joe in Tennessee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. This thing with Kate Smith is a national embarrassment.
I agree.
I mean, this lady. I feel sorry for a lot of my old Philadelphia Flyer fans. They loved Kate Smith. I mean, one time when they were in a important playoff game, she actually sang "God Bless America" on the ice at the stadium. The old lady came across the ice, almost fell, and sang "God Bless America." And you know, they had a statue over there. That shows how much they loved her. The fans loved her.
Yeah, but now they're calling for that statue to be torn down.
Oh, I know, it's insanity. I mean, and this lady, so she sang a song that was politically incorrect almost 100 years ago. They're digging that far back. And meanwhile, you listen to any rap radio stations, you hear the N-word all the time. You hear about rape and beating on women and all kinds of nasty stuff. But, you know, the problem with Kate Smith is like, the problem with everybody that they're tearing the statues down, they're wholesome people. They're actually good Christian wholesome people. I mean, Roosevelt said to Churchill, "This is Kate Smith. This is America." That's what he said about Kate Smith, and that's what she is. Kate Smith is America. She's and they hate America. These same people that want to tear her statue down, they hate America. That's what people have to understand. They hate Christianity, and they hate America. And that's by getting rid of the statues, they're going to destroy. They think it's just like any barbarians did in Rome or anywhere else. They destroyed the statues to try to destroy the culture, and that's what this is all about. It's a damn disgrace. And I tell you the truth, I doubt there's 10 black people that are really offended by Kate Smith. I think it's just a bunch of crazed liberal communist Marxists that are behind all this.
I would agree with you because I'd never heard of those songs before they made a big issue out of this. I mean, somebody really had to go digging, looking for this stuff.
Yeah, and one of the songs was done by that guy Robeson, who was a black communist, but he had a great voice. So, you know, I don't want to tear down any statues of him. You know, it's so ridiculous. But it's at the same time, it's a shame. It really is a shame that this country has become so petty and that our culture has been taken over by a bunch of communist, Marxist, anti-Christian, anti-white radicals.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to mention was the whole thing about impeaching Trump. I mean, do the Democrats realize what just happened with the Mueller report? Do they realize that all Obama and Hillary and all these people are going to be getting investigated? I mean, it's amazing to me that they're so deluded that they think that impeaching the president is even an option, because this is going to be Trump's water torture on the Democrats for the next few months, all the way up to the election. You're going to be seeing indictments. You're going to be seeing who are they going to call to a witness for Trump's impeachment hearing? Comey, who's going to be indicted soon. McCabe, who's likely to be indicted. How about Susan Rice? All these people with the D-class. You know, it amazes me. I can't believe people can be at such a high level in government and be so retarded. Excuse my French, but that's really a good word for the way they're thinking.
Yeah,
it's just they seem to. It's almost like Hitler in a bunker. They're directing troops. They're beaten. They are totally shellacked. And they have no idea what's coming. I mean, they don't realize that right now probably half of these people are ratting each other out. And meanwhile, they're talking about impeaching. I think the only one with any brain seems to be Pelosi. She's like ex-nay on the impeachment schnay because, he's got all the cards. Hello.
Yeah, well, she understands right now that, Trump is getting a lot of sympathy. Because the Mueller report basically said this whole Russia collusion thing was a hoax, and he was being victimized. And so Pelosi is understanding they could in theory, impeach Donald Trump, but they cannot remove him from office, it would be a replay of the Clinton impeachment.
Oh, but the other thing is that any kind of sympathy that, or any kind of asking for, for Trump to hold back against Hillary and Obama is going to burn in the ground also, because if they start saying, well, Trump's being mean to Obama and Loretta Lynch and all these people that were involved in this charade and criminal act against Trump, then he's just going to say, are you kidding me? You want me to be nice? So, I've always said since the beginning of this, the genesis of this, I don't want any deals. The fact that they're still fighting is good, because in order to destroy the deep state, you can't make a deal with them. They have to be rooted out, exposed, and destroyed. And
yes,
it's headed in that direction. And let them talk about impeachment, because they're kind of like anybody that goes along with the Democrats, or they're going to be like Jim Jones followers. They're just going to. I don't know if there's any hope for them because they're so delusional. But at the same time, as they're becoming more and more of a farce. They really have. And the fact that the media has destroyed itself, its credibility to any thinking American over this whole thing. I've been surprised all along that they keep going out on a limb and going further and further and further, and they're just going to go all the way and go off the cliff, I guess. So you got to give Trump credit. He's basically destroyed the credibility of the fake news media, and he's also destroyed the Department of Justice, the FBI's credibility, the CIA, the NSA, the intelligence community, all their credibility. So, you got to give Trump credit on this one. I mean, he kind of let them destroy their own credibility.
Yeah, that was basically it. They did it to themselves.
But you got to admit, I mean, that to me has been one of the greatest things about the Trump presidency, is his ability to just allow others to just go so crazy and hysterical that they expose themselves, and they've done a great job, and it's a good thing. And I'm hoping that as these people rat each other out, they go deeper than just this scandal. They start saying, oh, well, you want me to go to jail for this? What about 9/11? What about Oklahoma City? What about Sandy Hook? What about, because why should I go to jail when you've been covering up all these crimes, for the last 30 years? So hopefully we'll go back to JFK, for crying out loud. That's my hope in this whole thing, is that as this can expand, because like I said, McCabe's going to say, oh, I got to go to prison for this. What about, 9/11? I came in at the end of it, and that just was the cover up there just started.
Well, what we're going to see here, Joe, is we're going to see just how powerful the deep state really is in terms of who does and does not get indicted and arrested and charged. And I know we've been hearing from people like Devin Nunes that all these criminal referrals are going out to the Department of Justice. But again, it's going to be up to William Barr as to whether anybody gets indicted and charged. And until William Barr actually starts signing indictments and issuing them, I'm not hopeful anything's going to happen. I'm sure that the word has gone out, that if there are indictments and charges, that certain really dark secrets will be made public that will embarrass the entire government.
Yeah, and I hope that they do come out, and I hope that although it will embarrass the government, it's what the government needs.
Yep.
The American people need to know that these crimes have to be exposed, so that people don't give blind faith to their government. Don't go marching off to wars based on lies and because of the government. It's very important, and that's what I'm hoping for. And I've been hoping from the day that Trump was inaugurated that this would lead to that, and that's what I'm hoping that it happens. Now, William Barr is an establishment Republican. I'll be surprised. I mean, I'll be very happy, but I'm still, I'm not convinced that he'll go that far, that deep. I doubt he will.
I'm not either. We've had too many of these attorney generals who have proven to be, gatekeepers and protectors rather than law enforcement people.
I think that's part of the reason why Clinton keeps the fact that she could run for president out there is because if she ran for president, it would protect her from indictment, because then she could make it that it's a political issue. And I think that's part of the reason she's hemming and hawing, and she's playing Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, but Macbeth, whereas she's to be, because I think that it politically it'll be very difficult to indict her if she is running for president. So that to me is part of the reason I think she's playing this game. She hasn't ruled it out,
No, I think she's seriously looking at running. Now, Biden's entry into the race on Wednesday, it's like, why bother showing up for the press conference? Everybody knows that's what he's going to say. But Biden's stepping in on Wednesday. He's going to automatically be the front runner, I think. And with that strong a candidate in the Democratic field, it may convince Hillary to stand down, because she basically said if there are no clear front runners by the fall, that she was going to step in. And I think Biden's presence in the campaign may convince her to stay out. I don't want to see her run again. I don't want to have to go through in 2020 what I went through in 2016 to keep her out of this race, because I don't want to see her in the Oval Office. You're right. Trump is a disappointment, and with Hillary in the White House, the same things would be happening, only faster.
Well, I just, I think, like I said, Hillary's just hemming and hawing to keep her from getting indicted. That's her only play she has now.
No, I think she's serious. I think she's serious.
Oh, well?
I think she's serious about trying to run again. She can't let go of it.
Maybe it's a money thing, too. All that money that they're having a campaign. I mean, her campaign spent like $2 billion. How much of it went in her pocket or her family's pocket? I mean, campaigns are notorious for hiring relatives and all kinds of people and paying marketing firms.
No question about that. We don't know how much money there is in that Clinton Foundation. I mean, we don't know how much money the Clintons have.
Yeah, and running for office is probably a very lucrative business for her, obviously. I'm sure it's $1 billion campaign. How much of that, 10%, right?
Yep.
10% of $1 billion. But, it's interesting. One other thing is that, you don't really hear the press ever ask any the people involved on the other side of this Russian collusion delusion any questions. I mean, why isn't Obama ever asked, like, what did you know about the Steele dossier, and why did you spy on Carter Page, or the Clintons, or any of them, Loretta Lynch? They're all given a pass, and they're like, it's like all the president's men, and they're never, with Nixon, and nobody's asking them anything. And you'd think that the press would be outside Obama's castle or whatever he lives in, estate, and trying to ask him, like, well, when did you know that they were spying on the Trump campaign? And they just give a total pass to the Democratic side in this.
Yes.
And that's going to have to come to an end when all the indictments start, hopefully. But we'll see. And expect a false flag probably before the big indictments happen. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's probably you're probably right about that. But again, for all we know, indictments may have already been handed down. The corporate media is just not going to report on them. The corporate media has lost its objectivity. It is totally liberal. It is totally Democrat, and it's not even ashamed about that fact. When this whole Russian collusion delusion blew up, I was expecting some people were going to get fired. Hasn't happened.
Well, the media were part of a criminal conspiracy to frame Donald Trump. I mean, they were involved with Comey, and when they put the information out, and the P dossier through Brennan, it was all shot through the media. They all knew they were part of it. It was all part of a grand conspiracy. I hope that they get indicted too. I mean, there are members of the media that committed criminal acts in this whole thing.
I agree.
That's going to come out. So it should be. Let's just hope that sunlight. And then they say sunlight is the best antiseptic, or fresh
best
air and sunshine. Let's see it all. Disinfectant. Let's. I want it all out there. And anybody that doesn't, there's something wrong with them.
I agree. I agree. We need to basically shake the American people and say, here, look at this. Look at what these people have been doing. And
I'm not scared to go back. I want to keep going. I want to go to 9/11 and Sandy Hook and Waco and Oklahoma City and Randy Weaver. Let's get to the bottom of all this stuff. Maybe that we'll head for an era of truth, and then people can understand why you don't want government to be too powerful.
I agree. I absolutely agree. All right. Well, listen, Joe, we're going to let
Thanks, Mike.
All right, we're going to let you go here. We're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And getting on back here to international news here. Over in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, they're having a huge problem with the Ebola virus. They're saying it will not become a global health threat, that they're pretty sure that they have the exposed people more or less contained. However, recent updates paint a less optimistic picture, and in point of fact, somebody showed up at the border with the United States infected with Ebola. They're testing people for Ebola down there on the border. They found absolutely one case. So we've got to be very, very careful about that. Now, as you know, we've had a lot of natural catastrophes. We've had the flooding in the Midwest, typhoons, hurricanes, tornadoes. It's been a rough year. And unfortunately, it is already starting to hit the global supply chains, meaning foods are becoming, shall we say, scarce on the market shelf. In fact, Claire and I were at the local Safeway the other day, and we don't know if this had anything to do with just bad timing or issues with the supply chain, but we noticed a lot of empty shelves. So it's just something that you want to be aware of when you go to the store. Okay, now, electric cars, they're very cool. I think they're very cool. When we were forced to buy a newer car after our Honda got stolen and stripped, I looked at electric cars. We couldn't afford one. Okay, more about electric cars when we come back. Welcome back to our show. And so we're talking about electric cars, which I think are very cool, and I do think they're the wave of the future. However, they are not as environmentally friendly as people thought. There's been a German study, and it shows that electric vehicles will not decrease CO2 emissions in Europe over the coming years. Because according to the study directed by Christoph Bukal of the University of Cologne, electric vehicles have significantly higher carbon dioxide emissions than diesel cars. This is due to the insignificant amount of energy used in the mining and processing of lithium, cobalt, and manganese, which are critical raw materials for the production of electric car batteries. Oops. Oops, oops, oops. Now, another little oops here, and we basically predicted this was going to happen. NASA is now admitting that higher levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere are in fact greening the Earth. Ooh, big shock there. Carbon dioxide is not a toxic pollutant like the EPA wants to claim. It is plant food. And the more CO2 you have in the air, the faster, taller, and more productive plants will grow. That's just the way it works. And NASA's now saying, yeah, the CO2's gone up. And by the way, CO2 in the atmosphere has gone up, the temperature has gone down. So take that, Al Gore. All right, let's see. Apparently down in Auckland, protesters halted traffic at an intersection in a rebellion against climate change. Well, what are they going to do next? Go down to the beach and flog the ocean to stop the tide from coming in? It is absurd if you really think about it. Climate changes. It's always changed. It changed long before humans evolved on this planet. It'll go on changing long after we're gone. There has never been a time in geological history where climate wasn't changing. So these 40 people are out there saying, well, we're going to protest against climate change. Okay, how about protesting against the sun coming up, or the sun going down, or the moon going through its phases, or the tide coming in? Why don't you protest against weeds in your front yard? It's all part of nature. What we need on this planet is a good dose of common sense. We seem to have lost it. Everybody's caught up in all these things. You know, what bathroom to use, climate change, you know, like there's something that we could do about climate change, and there really isn't. It's just an effort to sell you something, get your money, get your obedience. Anyway. Okay. Over at the grocery chain Whole Foods, they introduced their own brand of bottled water back in 2015. And of course, it was billed as, you know, purity and healthfulness. It flows out of the ground, blah, 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 blah. And they basically said, we have a spring house over it so we can let the water go down to the bottling plant. It's amazingly pristine water. And the brand name is Starkey Water. That's the Whole Food brands. Unfortunately, they had to recall more than 2,000 cases in early 2016 and 2017 after tests by regulators showed an unacceptable level of arsenic. And of course, Whole Foods is still out there saying, well, we've done our own tests and we're sure that the water is safe to drink. But just, you know, this commoditization of water, again, it's getting money out of you. The president of the Nestle Corporation actually came out and said he did not think that humans have a natural right to water, that water should be bottled and sold for money, that you would pay for your water. What's next? Air. And now we're finding that the water we're being sold in these bottles is actually toxic. More toxic than what's coming out of the faucets in our house. So we have to be very, very careful about that. Okay, we're coming up here on another commercial break, and we'll be right back. And aloha America, welcome back to our show here. And getting on back to our news. And oh my goodness, didn't realize I had that here. So we're talking about water. We're talking about bottled water. It's a huge business right now. And unfortunately, like so many of our other businesses, they're not being very careful with the product. They're putting out product that's actually bad for you. So Nestle is now facing a class action lawsuit from consumers in 8 states based on claims that the Poland Spring brand is 100% natural spring water. And the plaintiffs from Maine to Pennsylvania are alleging deceptive labeling. Now, a classic example is labeling something all natural. That label really means that all the ingredients occur in nature, but it doesn't guarantee a healthier product. There are plenty of unhealthy things in nature, like, well, for example, tobacco. The label all natural implies a healthier product because many other products are pumped full of chemicals. What Nestle does is more egregious. They put Poland Spring on their waters. Consumers make the reasonable assumption the water comes from the Poland Spring in Maine that is the implied source. They then think it's fresh spring water when in reality it's just groundwater out of a tap. A lot of deceptive advertising out there. A lot of these bottled waters are they're just filtered tap water. You're better off getting, a water filter and filling your own bottles. Really. Okay, over at the European Space Agency, they're working on a project called the Synergistic Air Breathing Rocket Engine, or SABRE. It's being developed by the British company Reaction Engines, and it's getting a green light for major tests, and it operates in 2 modes. In aircraft engine mode, it uses oxygen from the atmosphere, and in rocket engine mode, it burns an oxidizer carried on board together with liquid hydrogen. And it actually makes a lot of sense. For the vast majority of time a rocket is climbing towards space, it's still in the atmosphere. It should be using atmospheric oxygen. This is a very simple, elegant idea, and I wish them a lot of luck. And it kind of makes you wonder why Robert Goddard didn't think of that. Or maybe he did and he just couldn't get it to work. All right, now, the college admissions scandal, the bribery scandal, is still going on out there. A lot of people have already pled guilty. They're cutting deals. And Lori Loughlin's daughter is now officially being investigated by feds. So they're down to saying, what did the kids themselves know about what was going on? Were they aware the bribes were being paid? Were they aware that they were getting a free pay? I imagine those that were being put on these athletic teams without really being qualified probably had an idea that something was up. But apparently, multiple sources are now saying one of the daughters of Lori Loughlin and Massimo Giannulli is being investigated by the Department of Justice over her role in the college bribery scandal. And apparently the Daily Mail reported that one of the couple's 2 daughters received a letter from federal prosecutors in Massachusetts saying she was the subject of an investigation that could result in criminal charges. And what they're saying is they apparently have evidence that suggests she knew of the illegal plot. Okay. Over in San Diego, in the Claremont area, just yesterday, there was this Navy veteran, Anna Conkey, 31 years old, and she walked into the Easter service holding her 10-month-old son and a gun, mounted the stage and started talking about the rapture. And apparently some of the churchgoers basically tackled her to the ground, and police arrived to arrest her. Now, Conkey apparently worked as a journalist for NBC7 in San Diego and has apparently acquired a bit of a YouTube audience and Facebook audience with posts about Jesus is a liar, the Bible is a trap. Go Navy. By the way, YouTube has pulled the plug on Press TV's channel. No warning was given. That's YouTube being YouTube. GoFundMe is now banning anybody who questions vaccines. So the censorship is coming on down. It's coming on hard. I was talking earlier about a GoFundMe channel to help me move. They may not give it to me because of everything that I've got at whatreallyhappened.com. Everything I say here in the radio show. Alrighty. Now, over in New York, there was a lawsuit brought against New York's Department of Health by 5 parents who refuse forcible vaccination of their children. And apparently this was in response to the emergency order declaring the city's measles outbreak a public health emergency. And in addition to mandating the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine for children in zip codes affected by the crisis, it threatens parents who fail to comply with fines of up to $1,000. Now, there have been 329 confirmed cases of the illness, mostly among observant Jews in the Williamsburg neighborhood of Brooklyn. They appear to have brought it back from an outbreak that's taking place in Israel. So they're out there just telling everybody, stick the needle, stick the needle, stick the needle. Article out of uns.com, and this is something we actually talked about on Friday on the protected race. And the article is saying, by almost every metric, Jews are the most protected ethnic group on earth. Jewish institutional security is heavily subsidized by taxpayers throughout the West. In Germany, the government provides an annual stipend of $15 million to the Central Council of Jews. In Great Britain, the government spends around $20 million annually on both security for Jewish institutions and Holocaust education designed to combat anti-Semitic ideas. It is a bit of a racket. Okay. This is just a little weird. Okay. Apparently, there was this video that was put out on social media from this church that showed kids spitting on, hitting, and cutting an associate pastor with a steak knife to illustrate what happened to Jesus when he was on the cross. That's just, I don't understand what's going on here. Over at the Faithful Word Baptist Church in Tempe, Arizona, Pastor Stephen Anderson is saying that Bank of America shut down all of the church's bank accounts. Without any notice, they can't get their money out. And we can't even walk to the bank, withdraw money. They just froze everything. Now, supposedly, they will send a cashier's check in 2 weeks for all the money. But in the meantime, they just locked the accounts down. And the only reason Pastor Anderson said they might have done that, he's attracted controversy over the years due to his fundamentalist preachings on the issue of homosexuality. So, and now I'm going to tell you right now, I don't agree with Pastor Anderson on his views on homosexuality. But I don't think banks should be enforcing their particular point of view on the rest of the world. They're supposed to be a business. They're supposed to be a bank. We've got way too many corporations, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, that are just out there saying, we have the power and the means to enforce our worldview on everybody else. Well, what if people don't agree with you? I don't agree with Pastor Anderson, okay? But I don't agree with Bank of America just shutting down his bank accounts. It's ridiculous here. Okay. Over in Chicago, somebody set up this car sharing company where you basically sign up, they install some added electronics in your car, and the people who are going to use your car have an app on their mobile phone, and they send in the money on a credit card. The app unlocks the car, they get in, they drive it, they leave it someplace else. Unfortunately, somebody figured out how to hack the app, and 100 high-end cars were stolen, and they've now been forced to shut down the service. So good idea, poor implementation. A host of popular Android apps from a major Chinese developer, including a selfie app with more than 50 million downloads, have been committing large-scale ad fraud and abusing user permissions. This is coming from BuzzFeed. In several cases, the apps took steps that concealed their connections to the developer DU group to users and failed to clearly disclose rented lips, they were collecting and sending data to China. The investigation also raises questions about Google's policing of apps in the Play Store for fraud and data collection practices. Well, we could say the same thing about a lot of the stuff that's over at the iTunes store. The apps are coming in fast, and they're not being checked all that carefully. Alrighty, so we're going to grab a phone call here. Jeff in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How you doing? Yeah, I'm deeply troubled by the situation in America today.
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, so I'm thinking that the only way for America to survive what we've always had. It's like a 3-step program, and what should happen, no matter how hard it might be for people to realize, but common sense would indicate that the best thing that we could do would be to remove all the judges. The second would be to, arrest all the lunatic left in our society.
Yes.
And the second thing would be to,
and the lunatic right.
Huh?
And the lunatic right. They've got their share of crazies over there as well.
Well, yeah, that's true. But you know what? The lunatic left is going to destroy us. The lunatic right is only trying to reclaim what we've always had.
Yes. Okay.
We try to be tolerant. We try to be tolerant of these people, but they have no tolerance. They want to destroy us. They want to destroy our country. Can't tolerate them any longer.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of a hard line approach here. I mean, I'd like to find a way to engage in dialogue, but you're right. The left tends to be a bit fanatical.
Well, that's our weakness, by letting them have a voice, because they're insane. You can see can't you see the insanity sweeping this country?
Yeah, I have been, and I've been commenting on it. It does feel like sometimes the whole world is just losing its mind.
It is. You're right. The whole world is losing their mind. So all I can say is that the time has come to take these people and check them.
Okay. I mean, I sort of get uncomfortable when people start talking about, us against them in a confrontational manner. And I would like very much to perhaps not have it like that. I prefer the Gandhi approach. But it does seem, looking at what happened after Hillary lost her election and all the rioting that was going on in the streets, it does appear like the left does not want to engage.
What will it take? Does it have to get to the point to where Mohammedanism conquers Spain and rules over it for 700 years? Is that what it's going to take?
Well, now we're going from left versus right to religious wars. And I think
it's all right there. It's all the same. All right, Mike, I'm going to let you go because you're not open to this idea. So thank you very much. I appreciate you, and I think you're a very balanced and fair-minded individual. Is why I listen to you and comment to you. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for the phone call. You know, I just want to avoid this idea of we have to do X to them because it's counterproductive. Anyway, we got to take a commercial break. Back with the last segment of our program today after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today here. We've got two callers waiting on the line. We're going to start with Bruce in Austin. Aloha, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I've been a long-time listener. This is the first time I've called. I want to tell you that the last year I committed to reading three of the great dystopian novels of our time, Brave New World, 1984, and Leap. And I was really shocked as I reread these books at how much I see happening today. It really parallels what I saw read, especially in 1984. If you look at what happened, for example, with the Kate Smith statue and others,
yeah,
I think it justifies that, because what you're seeing is an attempt to eradicate history, and then in enforcing politically correct language on this, this becomes a form of newspeak, as Orwell wrote about in 1984. People are being conditioned to think differently by speaking differently, and so if you get a really dark view of what's happening now, I think reread 1984 very carefully.
Yes,
I think you'll find that a lot of what Orwell wrote there you'll see playing out in society today.
Well, Orwell wrote it as a warning. Unfortunately, too many of our world leaders are using it as an instruction manual. But Orwell really did intend it to be a warning.
I know. I read most of what Orwell has written in his life, and he was, I think, a very prescient writer. You might want to read a book called Orwell and Churchill, or Churchill and Orwell. It's a biography of the two. That book will lay out a lot of why Orwell wrote what he did. It'll give you a good perspective on what formed his thought, especially by the time he got to writing 1984.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm just shocked at what I see happening today. 30 years ago, when I was a young PhD student in geology, and I was laughing at the politically correct movement, I didn't think it would ever take hold. And right now, I have to admit, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I think it has got legs. Politicians are using this, and the media are complicit in forcing this nonsense on us. And if we don't do something to stop this, we're going to end up in a society that looks a lot like that dark world that Orwell painted.
Yeah. Or Brave New World, Aldous Huxley.
Yeah, that's a bit. That's a different version. It's a somewhat softer version of tyranny. But I think what you're looking at evolving today is something that looks a lot more like what Orwell wrote about, and frankly, not just some of what Zematin wrote in his novel We. Zematin was a Russian engineer who wrote all about the year 1920, and that's a very dark novel, very, very dark novel. Kind of difficult to read, but it's a very dark novel and worth the effort. And I think Orwell actually references that. And in some of his writings, I think that was an inspiration for part of why he wrote it in 1984.
Okay, well, Bruce, we're going to let you go. We're going to try and slide in Don in Iowa. Don, we're almost out of time. What's on your mind?
Kate Smith, not many people, hardly anybody has a metaphor, a world-famous metaphor named after them. It ain't over till the fat lady sings. That was all about Kate Smith.
Yeah.
They used her. And I want to say that they can tear down these statues. That's just an example of the weak city council in some of these places. If they go along with it, that's just the weak. But testing the First Amendment in some other areas is going to go to the Supreme Court. Okay, I'll let it go, Mike.
Yeah, we got to head on out. The music is playing there, and I have to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of useful things to share with you. Take what you learn here and at the website, share it with everybody that you know. We need you to go on out and promote republicbroadcasting.org. We need you to promote whatreallyhappened.com. Now's the time to start growing our audience, because there are a lot of people who are turning the corporate media off right now. We need to basically lure them in. So have yourselves a good afternoon. We'll be back tomorrow, and aloha, America.
Athletes